excuse the drawer behind me. We are doing some kitchen stuff. This is my June wrap up. God, June. Ugh, how is that a thing? I don't know how it's a thing. But anyway, I started off with the 6 Crimson Cranes. I will have a separate video for 6 Crimson Cranes, the sequel, The Dragon's Promise, and Her Radiant Curse, which is kind of like a companion novel. So I will have a video for all 3 of those. Hopefully soon. Probably not soon. Because, well, I'm not done with Her Radiant Curse yet. So, still working on that. This was a reread, and I loved it. I think I enjoyed it even more than the first time around. Elizabeth Lim is probably one of my favorite authors. Like, I love her world building and her characters and the way that she weaves like fairy tale and myth and lore into her stories. I spent a lot of time while I was rereading this looking for Easter eggs for the Spin the Dawn series, since they're set in the same world. I do think 6 Crimson Cranes is set prior to the events of Spin the Dawn, and Spin the Dawn is set in the neighboring country. You don't have to read them in any particular order because they're not like directly connected. They're just in the same world. 6 Crimson Cranes follows Shiori, who witnesses her stepmother using magic, and when she is caught, she is cursed to wear a bucket on her head while her brothers get turned into cranes. She can't speak, or else a brother dies for each word that she says, and she gets magically whisked away to a far-off island and has to figure out how to reunite with her brothers and lift the curse, like all while not being able to talk to anyone, kind of being like ostracized because she has this bucket that no one can take off, that sort of thing. And that's kind of just a really basic, bare bones outline of the whole story, but there's a dragon, there's a broken betrothal, and just a lot of adventure. So it was really fun. There's like a cute like pseudo animal companion that I really loved. It was a lot of fun to reread that. And I was like, oh man, well now I just want to go reread Spin the Dawn, but I have so many other things that I am working on and like should be reading instead. But maybe I was really tempted to like reread Spin the Dawn and like see what Easter eggs I could catch between the two, but I think I'll have to do that at a different time. We're just going to go into The Dragon's Promise, even though that's not next on my list, because it's on top of my stack. I think you can sort of see the stack. I really enjoyed this. Maybe just like a tad less than 6 Crimson Cranes. I've heard reviews in the past where people have disliked Elizabeth Lim's writing and other books because her stories pretty much always start off as one thing and then turn into something else by like the middle of the book. Like there's usually like 2 different plot lines. For example, with Spin the Dawn, people were upset that like it's marketed as, what's that show? Meet the Runway? Whatever. The one where they like make garments for the runway. But it's like marketed as like one thing, but that's like half of the book. And then it turned into like an adventure story, which I loved. I thought that was great. That didn't bother me at all. But a lot of people did, because they wanted more of the first part. Yeah, so this was the first book of hers where I thought that transition was a little jarring, and I was kind of just like, oh, okay, I guess we're done with that first plot line now. And like it makes sense timing wise, because like she did have to go and like take care of other things. It was like a little abrupt, and I don't necessarily know that it felt like it closed the door more than I would have liked it to on certain things, so that just took the enjoyment down like a hair. I like the way that it wrapped up overall. The way that this ended kind of made me want to go back and be like, oh, did I don't want to like say too much, but like did certain characters show up again in Spin the Dawn, or am I just remembering like incorrectly or something? Or like were they just kind of like there in passing, or like were they there at all? Were they there in passing? I don't know. Maybe I will. Maybe I will just do an Elizabeth Lim reread. So we'll see. I'll see how long it takes me to finish her Radiant Curse. The next book is Sakamoto Days Volume 12. This wrapped up with some fights and revealed like some backstory of some of the characters that we've been meeting throughout this kind of arc. I'm still really enjoying it. I think this arc has opened up the world a lot. And like that's great. Like that's fine. That's kind of what you want and expect. It kind of like wrapped things up and is like setting things up for the next volume. So there was a lot of kind of the conflict that's going on is going to continue into the next volumes, but it like wrapped up like the current fight for some of these characters, and then like we got more information to like proceed to the next step, if that makes sense. We'll definitely be continuing. I think I got this for my birthday, or well, with some birthday money. I think it was published in June, yeah. So the next one's probably going to come out in a few months. The next books that I have are volumes 5 and 6 of A Man and His Cat. And this is still, it's just such a joy to read. It hasn't really become one of my favorite manga series. Like, it's not necessarily one that, like, it's not the most plot heavy. I'll say that. It's way more slice of life. There is a plot and there is a story thread throughout these. It's lighthearted and wholesome, but it also deals with some heavier topics in like a really gentle and hopeful way. Every time I think about this series, I'm happy. Like, it's not something where I'm like, oh, I gotta know what happens next. I mean, like, I do. There's no fighting like in Sakamoto Days. It's not like I am sitting here like, oh, I need to know how they broke the curse or anything like that. But it's just like, it just makes me happy. And I think that's enough. The next one is, so this is the first volume of Heaven Official's Blessing in Chinese, but it's the comic version. So there's, it's art. And it's pretty much a one-to-one comic version of the first novel in the novel series. I can't read Chinese, but I was able to follow the story pretty well since I've read the novel series. The art is beautiful. Let me find one of my favorites. I sent a couple pictures to a friend because I got her into the series and I just was like, yes, look at this. If you know this scene, you know this scene. Like, it's so good. Just like these panels are just so... Oh, I think this one. I think this one here is my favorite. One of my favorites. I am kind of tempted to get the rest of the series, like the rest of the comic series, in Chinese. But I suspect that they will eventually do an English version. I don't necessarily know that they would keep the same art because the art for the Grandmaster Demonic Cultivation comic is slightly different. It's a slightly different style, and the art for both the comic and the light novels of Grandmaster and the covers and like other internal art for Heaven Official's Blessing is the same in the English versions. It's slightly different from this comic version. So maybe if they eventually do come out with the comic of this in English, I'll have to see. If it's different, then maybe I might be really tempted, because just for the art itself. Not that I can read Chinese in any way, shape, or form. The final one that I actually have decent notes for is Demons of the Shadow Realm. This is Hiromu Arakawa's newest series. She's the author of Fullmetal Alchemist. She also did like a more slice of life story called Silver Spoon. I've only read one volume of that, and I'm like, every time I think about getting more, I'm kind of like, well, I'm already getting all these other things, so like it can wait. I think eventually I would like to get back to it, but it's just not like super high up on my priority list. This is more, it's kind of like a reverse isekai, because like a kid who is living in this super remote isolated village, and then he discovers that like Tokyo exists, but there's still magic and other stuff going on in our world too. It's just, yeah, we're really starting to get into the story. We're getting new characters and kind of getting more connections between the ones that we've already met, like really starting to develop some of the, I don't know if magic is the right word, but like some of like the supernatural elements. We're starting to see the beginnings of like who I think could be like a potential like bad guy or antagonist. And like I think there's more than one, but I think she always does really a good job of like even the characters where like even if they start off kind of like we suspect that we're enemies, they like she usually is really good about bringing people around to like working together. I only read one KU book this month, and it was called Cold Hearted. It is a wolf shifter romance on KU, and another Janessa slash Mimo Reads recommendation. I saw a video that she put out of like her favorite like wolf shifter, like werewolf recommendations, and she was talking about this one, and I was like, great, sounds fun, and like just started reading it. It was mostly fun, like the world and the premise was really cool, but then the romance and when they finally got together felt a little rushed. So it's this woman who is a school teacher, and she moves to this small remote town in Alaska. She moved from Chicago and was leaving like a bad relationship and like a stalkery kind of boyfriend. So she was like, I have to get out of this city. I'm no longer comfortable here. I have to go. And so she moves and starts teaching at this really small school. And like, I can't remember if she had just the high school students or if it was like K through 12 or something, but she was teaching like a total of like 180 kids in the entire school. So way smaller than what she was used to in Chicago. And she is also struggling with depression on top of trying to like it's like depression, but then also just finally realizing that she's in a safe place and like being able to just like exist and be after this terrible relationship. So I really liked that part of it, and it's like she slowly realizes that they're werewolves, and like that part was entertaining. a little bit. But I don't know. It's so she gets brought to town by this guy who is like a bush pilot, and he does like all of their like supply runs like into like Anchorage, or I think it was Anchorage. And there's comments about how there's like locals and then there's outsiders, and the locals are like a mixed like First Nations kind of tribe, I guess. I don't group. I don't know if tribe is the correct word, but like that felt kind of weird because it was like there was a woman. So she gets room and board. She stays at like a local inn, and this woman, the woman who runs the inn, she runs it with her husband and her son, who I can't remember if her son was in high school or if he was older, like out of school. So she gets picked up by this guy to get to this town, and he is like super grumpy with her. It's like grumpy depressed and grumpy kind of asshole. Like it's just grumpy and depressed. Like it's not grumpy sunshine. The owner of the inn is an outsider who married a local, and she tries to like play matchmaker. So like she doesn't want, like, anytime that this woman goes and talks to any of the outsiders, like the other non-locals. I don't know why I did that, but anyway, anytime this woman goes and talks to any of the other like non-locals, she gets like ushered away and is like, "Oh, have you met so and so?" and like gets and this woman was basically trying to play like matchmaker, and it comes up as like, oh yeah, she's trying to like diversify the gene pool by bringing in these outsiders. And I'm like, I don't know that I love this. This seems questionable. And of course she and the pilot end up together, but he's kind of a jerk to her, and he's like, oh, like you're just here for some thrills, and then like you're gonna go back to the real world. Like this was just an adventure for you, and like you're just, that's why you're here. Like you're gonna leave in a couple years, so, and like you never spend any time in the room, like the common room with any of the other people who are there, and so like you're not trying to get to know any of us, so like of course you already have one foot out the door. And she's like, no, I just cannot be in the same room with people I don't know. I don't like big groups of people anymore because of my ex-boyfriend, because like she thinks that, like she's worried that she's going to see him and like he's going to be there, and kind of like she's just going to be blindsided. She doesn't like fake sick because she's like clearly like feverish and like very, very anxious. And so she gets out of like a party. He kind of like throws that in her face. And then she has to go into Anchorage with him one day to get books for her students. And like that's when he throws a lot of this like in her face. And she's like she shuts him up real quick when she's like, no, actually I'm leaving because I had a stalker boyfriend. Or like, I'm here because I had a stalker. Like, thanks. Like, this was to escape him. And so when they finally get together, you can probably guess how this goes. Her boyfriend shows up. That's kind of when they get together. Also, there is an assault scene on Paige where she gets invited to a bar. Like, it's like a couple locals and then a couple other non-locals. You know, it's like 5 or 6 of them, and or well, I think it starts off as non-locals, and then a couple locals join. There's a guy, like a local, who has like just returned from, I think, another village. He basically thinks he's like God's gift to women, and like really misinterprets her speaking to him as her being interested in him. Like she gets up to go to the bathroom and he follows her and like forcibly kisses her when she comes out, and he's like, "Oh, like I've seen how you're like looking at me, blah blah blah." And the pilot, like the grumpy pilot, pulls him off and is like, get off, get out. Like this is what happened. This is what happened last time. Like you want to get sent away again. He does issue her an apology and is like, anything you need from me, I will do to make amends. It's still giving the, it's not even like a threat of assault. It is assault at this point, to like push the two main characters together. So that's kind of another flag against it. And of course, like the native local, like First Nations amalgamation are the werewolves. And so it's kind of like, come on, like another one of these where the First Nations people are the animals. Like, stop. But yeah, like the rest of the story, like if you can ignore that, the rest of the world building was pretty entertaining. Because like she keeps seeing these wolves come through town. Like she sees the innkeeper, like a wolf come up to the door of the inn, like the kitchen, and the innkeeper just like gave this wolf a bone, and he goes, and then the wolf leaves. It's like it's stuff like that where it's just like goofy. Other than that, it's kind of just like there's a couple problematic things, and then the like where they get together is rushed, and like how they confess their feelings is rushed, and like the sex isn't that great. So I was like, you had me in the first half, and then you lost me. It's like it's alright if you can get past it. It's alright. And like based on the way I felt about this, I don't necessarily know that I would read anything from this author again. At least not in the same series, probably. Yeah, I think that's it. Except for the final series of volumes that I need to show you. I read 19 volumes of Haikyuu. I almost finished the series this month, but kind of just ended up dicking around on my phone and then like not finishing it. I had 3 volumes left at the end of like after reading these. So, and I've since finished. I don't know that I really want to say a ton. The final 3 volumes wrap up the series, and volume 42 is the end of an arc. This was a continuation of what is now a favorite series of all time. I I loved it. Like it's still so good. It's so good and so funny, and like I know it's a completed series, but I just wanted more. Like like it's a good series when all you want is more. And like it's not even that I want more in the sense that like I didn't get questions answered, but I just want more time with these characters and in this world, which it's about volleyball in Japan. So like it's our world, but it just basically just with these characters. I loved it. I don't think I would ever be into another sports manga. And like I never thought I would be in general into a sports manga, but this is probably the exception to the rule. It's just so good, and like you can watch the anime. We did go see the movie that just came out. The love that I have for these characters is like, I don't know. And it's so funny. And a lot of times, so this is related, I promise. So I've read Demon Slayer. My husband and I both read Demon Slayer, and we've been watching the anime. And like, we started watching the anime before we read it. And I think for that, the way movement and like fight scenes are animated is better than in the manga. Like, I don't know if that makes sense because, like, obviously, if it's animated, it's like able to show movement better. But for Haikyuu, I thought that it was like super easy to follow the motion of the characters and like the movements and all of that. Where Demon Slayer, it felt like to get like fully fleshed out and fully realized, like that you get like the full effect of the moves and the like the fights and the all that kind of thing. You have to animate it. Where with Haikyuu, for me, it felt like I got just as much sense of motion, sense of movement in the manga as in the anime. Like, obviously the anime is able to like hold that scene, hold that pose, hold that moment in time and like really emphasize it more than, like reading through a manga does. But you still get the same like sense of like, whoa, like that was really cool kind of thing. I hope I'm explaining that well. Haikyuu is amazing. Watch the anime. Read the manga. All of the above. Go see the movie. It's so good. If you know, Baby Kuro is so cute. He's so cute. Him, like Baby Kuro and Baby Kenma. I'm like, oh, you guys. And like, I love the way that this series, like, even though some of these characters are on opposing teams, you just come to like root for them the same way that you do for Karasuno. And just like the way that they all kind of like come together and like are still connected and like still support each other. And yeah, it's so good. And it's like one of those things where like I didn't play a team sport until I was in college. So like I didn't have that growing up, but there's just like such a sense of nostalgia where like that's concerned. I don't know. Like for someone who never played, like I mean I played sport. I did sports, but like they're all individual sports and not really like team oriented. Not that there wasn't a team, just like you compete individually. Anyway, so I think in total I read 27 books in June. Yeah, I read 27 books, which was 5,766 pages. No audiobooks. We are about to go on a family trip, and then I do have a work trip where I will be driving alone in my car for 8 hours each way. So I'll be able to get to. I did start a book, but I got like 3 minutes into it, so like that doesn't count. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to it anyway. And I do have some queued up, so I was gonna let you watch me put all of these away, but these are going under the table with another set of books. This is going over there. These are going to my husband. This one's going to my husband. This one's going over there. And then all 19 volumes of Haikyuu are going back in the office with my husband. So they're not staying here. So they're like, you would see me put 2 books away. So I'm going to go do that and be back.